suspend chat, or I'm just going to make chat that people can just talk to me. So something along those lines. Hi everyone, hope everyone's okay. Everyone all right? Hello, hi Karis, nice to see you. So I'm going to make it, if the participants start, that they can only chat to me or I shut it down. Hi MF. Hi Master Jim. Hi Roy. Hello. Hope everyone's okay. Just going to wait and see who comes in and then we'll take it from there. That's the way we go. It's recording as well. So I'm recording today as always, which I do make clear so everyone knows. So if you don't want to put a video on, don't put a video on because, you know, it won't be nice. Hello. Thank you, Cosmic. The stream is running. Appreciate that. Hello, Explorer. Nice to see you. So the stream is running live to YouTube, I think it is, isn't it, Cosmic? And then people can ask questions and do stuff there. So just see how many come in. Just give it a few more minutes. And Facebook, brilliant. Hi, Isabella. Nice to see you. Hello, everyone. Joey isn't in tonight, so it's just me. So if you do see someone wanking or mucking about, please try and sort of like wave at me. Is it not allowing video? Is this a new thing? No, it should be. Allow participants to start video. And there you go. You should be able to start video. I'm not allowing you to unmute after last time. So it should be okay. Can you start video? And you are allowed to chat as well. It should be. That shouldn't be there. Hopefully that's all okay. Sorry, that might have been me being a bit too security conscious given last time, but at least last time it was just me who copped it. I'm the fat, ugly old cums, whatever, so at least it wasn't going for other people as much as anything. Hi from Seattle. That's so far away. That's so cool. I love the fact that people come in from all over the world. I find that really cool. I'm just going to give people a few more minutes to come on in. So many people said they were coming. I find it so interesting, that difference between who says they're coming and who actually turns up coming. Hi, Rennie. Is it Rennie or Rennie? Nice to see you from London. Hi from BC, Canada. That's so cool, honey. Harry, sounds like I'm just a weird week. Isn't it every week? Stuart, good morning from Portland, Oregon. It's so cool, isn't it? I really love that. Surprised not many people are here considering the topics. It's interesting. Over 100 people said they were definitely coming. Over 100 people said they might be coming. I find those figures really low. I find those figures are around half at least of that, of the people who are coming. I think the most we've had in is about 130 at one stage. But I've also had a lot of messages today from people saying things along the lines of, I've tried to get in your room. Why can't I get in? But, you know, I don't think you've looked at the time or something. I don't know why, so maybe you've missed it. Hello, everyone. Hi. Nice to see you all. Hello from Mariposa, CA, near Yosemite National Park. Oh, cool. Wow, that's really nice. Oh, thank you, Roy, for that offer. That's very kind of you. If I have to make somebody a co-host or whatever, then, you know, that might end up being that way. Hi, Meanie Face and Kitten Soft. Really nice to see you all. As I said, just going to wait a few more minutes, see who comes in, and then let's start to go through the rules and say things the way that they are. Just Jay, I'm married to a Guernsey man. Well, that's not your fault, is it? I'm kidding, clearly. Guernsey's beautiful. It's really pretty. It's a lovely area. One of my best friends comes from down that way. Well, actually, she's not a best friend anymore. Who am I kidding? Let's be realistic. She fucked me over years ago, but she was lovely at the time. But it is a beautiful area. If you want honesty, you come to the right place. Let me say, that's the way it is here. That's what you're going to get. So just give everyone a few more minutes, and I'll start about 5 past, something like that. And I want to go through some rules. Clearly, as I say, if you see anyone mucking about, try and bring it from my attention, please. And I will try and kick them out and sort some bits and pieces out. If they start in the chat like they did last time, I'm just going to turn the chat facility off and change things so people can't chat and can't do things. Because for some reason, somebody advertises this on Twitter, and then people come in and try and destroy it. I don't know why. Do I want to change my format and do it somewhere else? I kind of don't want to do the work. Bit lazy, I appreciate that. Probably am lazy in some way, shape or form. Leather Lioness, I'm from Jersey, but I live in Canada now though. Oh, look at us, all us international folks. Honey, she, her, Canada, yay. Zeno, what Zeno says, hi from the UK. Personally, I am somebody who has a Swiss passport and an English passport, so quite cool. Okay, so Let me go through some rules, please. Please feel free to write down the side. You can chat and say what you like within reason. Please bear in mind that this is a group of people who want to come along, want to learn something, want to understand something, and have a lot to say. If you don't feel that, what I'm saying is for you, then please go. Protect yourself, don't stay. Please don't write about somebody else's appearance. Please don't write about anybody else in here. Please make sure you are dressed and clothed, and make sure that you've got all the basics going on, because those things really matter. So be kind, be respectful, think before you act and think before you speak. And if we have any trouble, I'll just kick people out bit by bit as we go. If someone in here is me, Pink Shrink, that's interesting. Or somebody just use that name. I don't know. Okay, so we're talking about something really extreme today. And first of all, one of the most important things I want to say before we even get started on this subject is this is one of the most dangerous things that you can do, and that you can participate in, and that you can be part of. In no way am I advocating doing this. In no way am I saying this is the way to do it. And in fact, if anything, I'm saying you shouldn't do it. That's actually what I'm saying at the end of the day, from a safety and a caring perspective. If you want to do it, that is up to you. So I'm going to talk about trying to make sure that we get things done in the right way, as in the safest way. That's what I'm going for today. So we're teaching a little bit. We're going to talk about these things. And if you have anything to say of any, that you want to say, then please do write it in the chat box as well. So you can always say what you've got to say. Why should I talk about this? Why should I say it? I've been on the scene for 40 years. I do therapy for a living. I've done a lot of this, I guess, as well. And I find a lot of mistakes are made around it. And I find it's really trendy at the moment. It trends on TikTok. It trends in other places. And it seems to be really cool to choke your partner out without any consideration. So who here likes breath play of any way, shape, or enjoys that sort? Like, anyone like it? Anyone do it? Anyone has done it before? Yeah, way too much. Never tried it. So we've got some extremes there of the two, haven't we? People raising their hands and saying, yes, me. So people have tried it, people haven't tried it. And of course, it can feel really nice. Autoerotic asphyxiation, is a really big thing that people do. However, somebody says to me, are you advocating this? Are you saying that there are potentially thousands of people that die every year, thousands, from autoerotic asphyxiation around the world, thousands, because of lots of reasons, and we're going to go into them, we're going to look at it all. The first thing I'm going to say, the dominance aspect of it is for some people, so it's control over somebody else's breathing, their life, and it is their life. And also, I really want to talk about brain damage today and everything else as well, and just to look at some alternatives and just to cover everything to make sure I get as much in here as I can, so people have got as much information to their fingertips. You cannot be safe or sane completely if you do breath play or waterboarding. You can't be. It's a little bit mad. It's a little bit out there. We can turn and say, it's really normal and it's fine. We are potentially playing with brain damage and people's lives. That is the outcome potentially of what's about to happen. So one of the first things I'm going to say is we have to accept that the risk, and we have to be aware of the risk, and we have to be personally aware of the risk. So, and Isabella, so there you go, Isabella, obviously think the same things at the same time. Crick and rat do cover breath play as best as we can. I think nothing covers breath play. I would even argue that crick and rat don't cover it, because you think you're aware of the risks, but really there are aspects of this sort of play where you cannot foretell what's about to happen, nor can you foretell what your reaction is going to be like, or are you medical enough to understand what's about to happen? None of us are. I don't even care if you're an expert in this and you're a doctor. Nothing covers this, because this is something people do outside of medical knowledge, outside of awareness of themselves and for others. I would argue if you're going to do this sort of play, you absolutely need to have done a resuscitation course. Has everybody done that? Some kind of first aid. I have. It's no good because I'm the recipient, so I can't resuscitate myself. I know, it's shocking. However, if you are going to play and do this, please, at least have done a course, at least have done something. Advanced first aid over here, but pretty useless when it's minor on the line. Exactly that, and that's my point. So what I find is, and I find this a lot, is a lot of recipients of this sort of play are the ones who have done some kind of first aid or qualification and care. And it's not as often the top. I'm not saying always, I never do. If you start to understand me or if you've seen me work before, you understand that that's not what I'm saying. Please have some kind of first aid care. Also, discuss your safety plan. What is going to happen if something goes wrong? These are basics. Please make sure that your phone is on charge. Make sure that you know how to dial the right people in the right way at the right time. If you can't grab your phone, if it's really dark, you shouldn't be doing this sort of thing in the dark anyway, by the way. You need to make sure lights are on. You need to make sure you can see what's going on. Honestly, really patronisingly, demeaningly saying this here, you shouldn't fucking be drunk and you shouldn't fucking be on drugs. If you are going to do this level of play in some way, shape or form, you need to be utterly in charge and aware of your own brain, your compass mentis and present. If you are having a really bad day, if you are having a really bad time and you don't feel normal, or if you have taken a different drug for the day, if you've eaten different food, if you've done something really different, then please consider not doing this form of play. Again, I'm not taking any responsibility from anybody about doing this kind of play. It's really important in this workshop that people understand that. I'm asking you to do your homework. I really am. I'd also argue that the person doing the choking needs to have had enough sleep too. Well, yes, sleep makes a real difference. Being awake makes a real difference. But actually, the most common problems around people who end up in hospital is actually alcohol and drugs. That's one, and actually it's domestic violence. But we're not talking about domestic violence here. And we're not talking about the people that use this as a form of self-defense or defense when they go into court to say, it was a sex game gone wrong. There's nothing I can do about that. So, although we are going to cover them a little bit, we're not talking about them fully. Please also understand the law in the country and the state where you come from, depending on where you come from. Some countries have basic laws against BDSM when it comes to do not leave more than a trucking or transit mark. That's pretty standard around the world. Some states in America don't say that, some countries don't say that. The same as legal sexual activity varies from place to place. However, some countries also have an extra law around strangulation and suffocation. And in the UK at the moment, there is a fight towards and potential for a new law to come in. There is a policy paper from July 2022 that's looking at coming in. So this will specifically hit us. So it creates a new criminal offence of non-fatal strangulation or suffocation. So when somebody intentionally strangles or suffocates somebody else, that's going to become a new law and it's an offence. So as even happens if you do it to somebody while abroad. There is going to be a small paragraph in it that says clearly if somebody consented, we have to look at that. However, so that's in section 75A brackets 2. I've been doing the homework, right? Be impressed, right? Okay? Right, so section 75A brackets 2. It does provide a defence for a person accused of strangulation or suffocation where the other person, the victim, consented to be strangled or suffocated of any other act, any that affected their ability to breathe. So that could be a gas mask or anything else like a gimp mask where we're covering or we're stopping someone from breathing. However, it will be with the defendant to provide sufficient evidence to raise the consent defence, and the prosecution have to prove that to the contrary beyond reasonable doubt. However, that defence will not apply, please hear this if you're in the UK, if the victim suffers serious harm, where the perpetrator intended to cause harm or was reckless as to causing harm. So is everyone getting that so far? Does everyone understand what that law will mean? So if we go a bit too far or something goes wrong, it doesn't even matter. And that is covered under Brown, R versus Brown, which we all know about and looked at as it was set out. Because you can't do an act that's more than battery. And if you cause that level of harm, that's going to make a real difference. So please when the act comes in, and even now, that's something we need to be really aware of. So Cosmopolite said physical, mental and emotional capacity. I would really agree with that. We've got to be in a healthy place, mentally, emotionally. If somebody's just died or something awful's happened, look, people are being massively impacted by the Queen dying. Not a good day to do it. I don't care if you're a royalist or not, I'm not going to go into that. That's not the point, but it might remind somebody of a death or something that has happened. It might be that somebody's had a really stressful day at work and they turn around and they say, hey, I really want someone to sort this out and do this. I've just realised my photo's above their Phillips. When I look at it, it's really funny because in my head, it's moved again. That looks like it's on their body. Their body looks really funny there. Doesn't it look brilliant? That made me giggle a bit. So we've got to be really careful. Are we both in an okay state to do this? Do we understand what we're about to do? And we are not pissed. We're not under any form of influence of any drug whatsoever. Now, when I say drug whatsoever, I do also mean over-the-counter medication and also prescribed medication. Not that you shouldn't do it if you're on some of those, but please be aware of some of the symptoms and side effects of some of the drugs that we take that diminish our capacity sometimes, that impact our mood and that influence us. And I've done a whole workshop on drugs and the influence that they have a few weeks ago. So please be careful. Cinders agrees and says everything needs to be in check to help reduce the degree of risk, not the breath play will ever 100% of course. I don't think we should ever talk about reducing risk. I think risk is there 100% of the time with breath play and waterboarding, end of. It's just the fact is we are going to do this as okay as we can with the knowledge that we can, and that's all that we can do. And we need to understand what medication the other person is on. We need to understand what's going on for them, and we need to do some medical checks. We honestly do. I am a fat old woman. I'm 57 years old and I'm a size 18, which is a 14 in the US, to give you an idea of size. The likelihood of me having more brain damage and passing out and not being well is higher than somebody who is 30 years old and size 10. That's the realistic impact of this. I also have pretty high blood pressure. So all of those things will go against me doing this. I've done this to the point of being choked up. I've done this to the point of passing out. I honestly think nowadays it just takes me a second or two longer to come around again. And I'm just aware of the impact as my head's really fizzing and I can't quite be present. So we have to be really aware of that. I really want everybody as well, I'm going to sound like everybody's fucking grandmother here before we go into all of this. I really think it's important that we're also aware of the anatomy of the neck. Who here knows about the anatomy of the neck and what they're about to start playing with and who understands it? And actually, if you're a bottom, like Cosmopolite raise their hand because I don't know if you're a bottom or not. Isabella, I saw you nodding. I know that you're a bottom most of the time or whatever, and it's no good being aware. It's like, the problem is it takes under 3 to 4 seconds for you to black out, even less if someone's pinching pretty tight. You watch it on films. I was watching a film the other day where a perpetrator started to choke somebody. And he was saying, there it goes, that's the bit I love. You see that the lights are starting to go out and you're like, mate, she would have been fucking knocked out about 10 seconds ago. You haven't got time to make a speech. However, when you're making that speech, they're gone. This person is gone, is unable to look after themselves. So all the stuff you see on films about this as well, honestly, isn't quite right because we're talking about split seconds. I have a writing on this on FetLife that shows a link to a video at the bottom that is a very interesting piece of filming about passing out, about showing how quick it is. It's a split second. It's absolutely shocking how fast somebody can go. I really suggest you watch it so you understand and know, depending on how we do this. I agree, Isabella. It's great to know, but it's not useful when you're not in control. So it's no good. So on the switch, but I'd better top for breath play. Yeah, I don't think I would. It's interesting. I don't think it's something I'd want to top over. I don't want to take that level of responsibility. Oh, thank you, Jim. That's so kind of you. Oh, no, that's a choking and sex article. I've got another one that's called Breath Play and Choking the Long Week. Unless that is that one, which it might be. I don't know. So it might be that one. It might not be. I'm not sure. But that's the one that I'm going to be talking about it in a bit anyway. So it's really important to understand that the neck is made up of triangles. That's how, when people are learning about the anatomy of the neck, they learn about the triangles in the neck and how the neck is configured. We talk about the neck holding the head on, keeping everything together. But also the neck is the only part of the body that has the one bone in the whole body that isn't connected to another bone. Did you know that? So we have a bone in our neck that isn't connected to any other bone. It's connected to ligaments, different bits. It's amazing. So we have a locus not floating really, but it's quite cool to say, isn't it? So again, do you know what you're doing? It is the hyoid. I'm going to come on to these things in a minute. So you have to look at the anatomy of the neck to understand what's going on. So you have the anterior and the posterior triangles in the neck that are really important. I'm not going to give you a whole anatomy class. You're all going to get fucking bored about half of this anyway. So I don't want to go into it all of it all the time so people get bored either. Please come back to bits that you think, fuck, now I'm falling asleep, and please check as well. So we have the triangles, anterior and posterior. We have vertebral, visceral, and vascular compartments. What does that mean? It means that we have bits of bone, bits of connection. It means that we have different compartments going on, that are nerves and different pieces that are really important. And we have connections from here about blood and everything else as well. I'm trying to use the most simple language I possibly can so everybody really understands this. So we have muscles, we have the larynx, we have our thyroid gland, and we have the hyoid bone. And it's really clever. It's a little bone with these little horns. If you've seen a picture of one, then that's where the erector looks like. It's just a cool image, as I keep saying. Deb's long read. It is a fucking long read. Thank you, Ian. That's very kind of you. I really appreciate that. One thing that Cosmic asked earlier is if somebody comes to these really regularly and wants to learn how to run it for him, he's willing to pay someone £20 to put them and to run it online through him and for him if somebody can make one all the time. So if you can help with that and you do want to support, please go speak to London Alternative Market because they're looking for somebody so we can keep these online and keep them going. So we then have 4 neck spaces, and the neck spaces are often broken into compartments. So we have the vertebral compartment, that's all about your postural muscles and your vertebrae. And you have those, you have your visceral compartment. That's about your glands, like your thyroid, your thymus, and different things that are there. That's your larynx, that's your pharynx, and that's your trachea. You know, we get to learn about the larynx when we talk about singing. We've got things like laryngitis, or we learn about tracheas when we watch all those films online where somebody says, quick, pass me a scalpel and a long biro, and I will save them because they are drowning in their blood or whatever, and I will help them breathe. I mean, interesting how people know exactly where to do it. I have counted down, I know exactly what to do. And I guess actually that also makes another really good point, doesn't it? It doesn't matter what you know. What matters is, do you know what you do when you panic? That's really important because if somebody has passed out and they're not coming round, if something has happened, what are you like when you panic? Do you need something on speed dial? Do you need someone else on speed dial who will phone 999 or whatever number it is in whatever country you're in for you? Somebody who knows that if you can speak to them or something happens and you can't talk, do you know what you do when you're panicking? Because a lot of us, we think about panic, we've got fight, flight, freeze, friend, fuck, block, phone, fawn, silly, I'm sure there are a few more. But we do a lot of things when we panic. So can I phone someone? Can I do something in this moment? Can I give first aid? Do I even remember what the fuck I'm doing and how to do it? One of the last cases in the UK where somebody died, what is considered accidentally, but that person ended up going to jail, was in Edinburgh. It was 2 very pissed people who got together, and from what all the messages have been about, it was about choking, it was about sex that people wanted to have, and he choked her. That's it. It was a heterosexual couple. They weren't a couple, it's the first time meeting. He choked her, and unfortunately what happened in that scenario is he did kill her. They were both drunk, and instead of trying to resuscitate or phoning the police or phoning an ambulance, he went for a walk for an hour. He went for a walk for an hour. And I really think we have to be very careful about that, because if you can't handle what you're about to do, should you be doing it? If you don't know how you're going to react, should you think about that? So that's really important, and we need to understand what's going on here. So we have the vertebral compartment, we have the visceral compartment, we have 2 vascular compartments. And they're very important right now because we talk about these when we talk about somebody blacking out. You've got the carotid artery, internal jugular vein, and the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is spoken about quite a lot when it comes to people's digestive systems or well-being or trauma or panic. So we're impacting all of these areas. And you know, your neck really matters. The way we use it, the way we turn around and what we do. A hard slap, a hard pull can really stop the neck from functioning. And it's really important that all our muscles around our neck really protect all those components and all those parts. So that protection is really important. So if you want to know about the neck, please make sure that you know about the neck, that you know about what's happening. And the neck kind of goes from here all the way down to here and includes tracts and different things as well. So please know about the basic anatomy about what's going on. The anatomy of the throat also comes into this slightly for us when we're looking at this sort of stuff. The jugular veins, we've got two internal and two external veins. And they draw blood from the neck, face and brain and return it to the heart. And vice versa, the internal jugular veins are right in and the external are right under the skin. So they're quite easy to find, especially if you look at that soft patch. You're quite hard around here. You'll find a soft patch. If you start to put your fingers down, you can potentially feel your heartbeat and you can see what's going on. Your vagus nerves are connected to your heart and your digestive tract, as I just said. They look at your digestion, they cover your heart rate and the other internal organ functions. All these things are really important. Am I boring anyone yet? Do you think I was just going to tell you how to choke people without covering this stuff first? Never going to happen on my watch, I'm afraid. We have the larynx in the voice box, so that's just above where the breathing tube is, all our vocal cords. And this creates our voice, but it also coordinates our breathing and our swallowing between those two. So if we start to muck about with things in different places, and it can be felt, especially if you've got an Adam's apple, you start to really cause some damage if we're doing things in certain ways. We can kill someone very easily around the neck. We really can. So you've then got the recurrent laryngeal nerve, which is also called the RLN, and that's the part of the vagus nerve that controls the movement in the muscles of the voice box. Done that now. And that also leads to the bronchi in the lungs. Definitely needs a good drink after that. Isn't that amazing? Hardly did anything. Have water handy, but don't jam water into somebody lying down. It doesn't work. They can't swallow. They can end up choking you because it's subconscious waterboarding. You didn't mean to, but now you're just about causing a drowning in some way, shape, or form. So please be careful. So there are other bits and pieces that are in there that are really important. Are these important for us with this? No. So we've got the thymus gland, the aorta. Now the aorta is blood important. So that supplies oxygenated blood to us. It's the body's main artery, and it's oxygen. So with oxygenated blood that comes to our system, that helps us work properly. And then we have our lymph nodes. And the lymph nodes are really important. Lymph nodes are these fantastic little glands that filter and have a look at the fluid between cells. If ever that you're at a risk of cancer and there are lymph nodes involved, they will have a look at those lymph nodes and they will have a look at the fluid that's in them and they will turn around and make sure that the cancer isn't in there. Because these tiny little nodes register where cancer is and where it's gone through, and it shows that message. So that's one of the things that helps you decide whether you're going to have chemotherapy or not, if indeed that's one of the tracks you want to go down. So the lymph nodes are in the throat as well. So there was a really interesting new piece of research about the harms of choking. So we're going through all sorts of things before we go through it. Many people don't know the difference between blood choke and a breath choke. I'd agree with that, Kelly. I'm going to come into that one fairly soon when I get through. So there was a whole piece of with the Me Too movement, there was a whole movement called We Can't Consent to This. Okay, the people who've heard We Can't Consent to This, and it's really more about domestic violence. It's not really against BDSM. However, it also has looked at and helped with a piece of research done by Burns, Sutherland and Coates in 2020. People heard of this piece of research, the harms of choking? Has anyone heard of this? So you can look it up yourselves. So you've got Burns, Sutherland and Coates, Coetzer, and it's a piece of research from 2020. But let's have a look at a quick summary about that. So when we look at choking, so there are, it's interesting, there are differences between choking and strangulation as well, and we'll come on to that one as well at some point. So this piece of damage is really about non-fatal strangulation, which is kind of what we're talking about. We don't actually make somebody choke when we're doing breath play. We tend to strangle in some way, shape, or form, or we stop supplying the blood flow. So we stop air or we stop blood. Both of those are lethal. Blood is a hell of a lot quicker to cause brain damage. Lack of oxygen to the brain also causes brain damage. So it's really important that, often when speaking to my youngest daughter about this, I think it was last week, she came to Lamb at the end. She wasn't silly because I bought her a couple of bits. She really wanted to get straight in, and she was like, "Thanks very much, Mum," because it's really normal for your mum to buy you those sort of toys, isn't it? But it is in my family. We're all very close. And it was interesting because this guy had said to her, "I fucking love choking women out." And she was like, "Cool, can you tell me what experience you've had?" And like, "Yeah, I've done it loads." And she went, "That doesn't really mean anything to me. Like, what first aid qualifications do you have? What do you know? Can you tell me what you do when it goes wrong?" This is a really good question to ask. Please ask this. What is your experience when it goes wrong? What do you do normally? What will you do when it goes wrong? And he said, "It never has." "What do you mean?" I don't think they're good answers. And she said, "I'm really sorry, but I don't think there's enough in it for me to even look at that." Whereas she plays with somebody else who really has thought about these things and have really extensive conversations about it. So, this piece of research, what the research talks about is neuropsychological outcomes of non-fatal strangulation in domestic and sexual violence. Now, although we are not considered to be victims of domestic and sexual violence during this because it is consensual, the impact could be insane. Notice I said could, I didn't say is. However, what you've got to be aware of, that even with no visible signs of injury, none, no bruising, no marking, no handprints, no pressure, nothing around the throat. If you leave no signs of injury, the sorts of harm that you can get, which can come in days or weeks later, is a stroke, cardiac arrest, which is a heart attack to you and I, miscarriage, if you are pregnant, potentially, damage to the fetus, if you are pregnant, potentially, incontinence, seizures, paralysis, speech disorders, and any other form of long-term brain injury. Do you still want to do this shit? And of course we do, because we're caught in the moment, but please really understand the risk. Let's just go through those again. Stroke, cardiac arrest. These are quite big, aren't they? I think they are. Miscarriage, incontinence, seizures, paralysis, potentially, parts or all, speech disorders of some kind, and any other form of brain injury. Now, what this piece of research talks about is more about the risk of you dying if you do this. 10% of the population in the UK have experienced some form of strangulation because of domestic violence. And if you have had that sort of domestic violence, it's over 50% when it goes into that, and 20% of them have been sexually assaulted. Plus, it takes up your risk of death as soon as you have this happen with a partner you didn't want it to happen with. And I would also argue, if you are playing on a BDSM sentence and somebody doesn't talk about this and just puts their hands around your neck, that is non-consensual. You haven't had a discussion. There's a lot of self-justification and righteousness and arrogance and fuck knows what else in that, regardless of anybody's gender. That's irrelevant in this moment. It's quite a severe issue. It is thought that strangulation, please listen to this, is the most common cause of stroke in a woman under the age of 40. Strangulation is the most common cause of a stroke in a woman under the age of 40. It's blood. It's blood supply. Vagus nerve might come into that, but it's mainly blood supply, oxygenation, and how it gets cut off to the brain. Lack of coordination for days is also one of the side effects. But yeah, and that can be semi-paralysis or paralysis. It really does make a difference. It's really not funny. Is there anything you should do immediately afterwards to check if you've done any damage? You cannot tell. You cannot tell because some of this damage can happen weeks or days afterwards. There'll be no visible signs that any damage has actually occurred. Clearly, if you see some of the classics that you might see when we're talking about chest pain, when we're talking about heart palpitations, you have to be aware that some of those things happen to a certain extent anyway if you blacked out and come back. If there is a slurring of speech or if somebody doesn't seem like they normally are, 999 a major emergency phone call is your best friend. Honestly, it doesn't really matter. Serendipity, I was rendered unconscious twice by a former partner using a scarf around my neck. I'm going to come on to why people use certain things and if that's any good or not. Subsequently, I have started blacking out when drunk, which I never used to. Is there likely to be any link? Yes, there could be. No one can answer that for you as a definite. Confirmation bias, all sorts of stuff, that's the problem. However, and of course, something else could have happened as a complete coincidence at a very similar time, and these things can happen weeks and months afterwards as a form of connection. The research isn't there on it to say it's definitely this and it's definitely that. And the main problem is if you've got, you literally dissect, like as in it's cut off the main neck artery, so you're blocking blood flow. And this is really important to and from the brain. Brain swelling can occur, cardiac arrest, miscarriage, all of those things, and a stroke. And then again, these things can happen for weeks and weeks and weeks afterwards. The damage has already been done. It sort of happens. And cognitive consequences can be things like amnesia, impaired executive function, your judgment isn't quite right, I'm not thinking quite straight here, I don't know what's happening here, how am I? Your consciousness can be lost in around and under 4 seconds when arterial pressure is applied. Losing consciousness means a mild brain injury. Do you understand that when you lose consciousness, there is a mild brain injury every single time? Now, people used to talk about killing brain cells, like it's like, that's not quite right, but it's quite interesting the similarities that we can hear and feel in this and think about in this medically when this happens. So it's just something to think about as well. So if you lose consciousness, that's very mild. In their piece of research, they were saying that, especially in domestic violence, that anywhere between, I think it's somewhere between 20 to 40%, don't quote me on that, it's fucking nearly accurate, it isn't perfect, between 20 to 40% of people have lost consciousness in this sort of stuff when it's in domestic violence. So this is what they're looking at. They're looking at when it happens. You can also argue domestic violence, it might be a lot more aggressive, there might be shaking involved, and it'd be a lot more reactive. So it's slightly different as well. I talked about cognitive consequences. There are also psychological consequences as well. That can be disassociation for somebody. If your mental health already isn't well, is this a good idea for you? The risks are suicide or suicide ideation, depression, anxiety, personality change, and PTSD. I'm also going to go on to the positives as well. Please don't think I'm just telling you you shouldn't do this, positives, and I'm putting that in air quotes a little bit. So it's something to think about. So it's a huge risk. Even if it is fatal, even if it isn't fatal, it is a huge risk. By the way, this is quite a shocking statement, but I'm going to say it. Strangulation, which is what they found in this piece of research, strangulation is more dangerous than waterboarding. Now, everybody thinks waterboarding is way more dangerous than you. I thought that. Did you think that? I thought that before I read this. Well, I've been doing this for 4 years. I thought waterboarding was way more dangerous than strangulation. Why? Because it doesn't just block the airway, it blocks the brain's blood supply. So with waterboarding, you block the airway, you cause different damage. We're going to come on to that as well in a minute. But because we block the brain supply, it's a lot more dangerous. So we've got to be really careful. So the researchers, I write, or someone else write it down if they want to, is Richard Byrne with a Y, B-Y-R-N-E, Saville, S-A-V-I-L-L-E, and Coetzer, C-O-E-T-Z-E-R. It's a piece of research on the damage caused by non-fatal strangulation. I was quite shocked when I read that bit. I was like, fuck, I didn't realise that. I always thought strangulation, you've got a bit more control and you're fine. So my naivety really hit me there. And waterboarding is actually considered inhumane. So that's quite interesting as well. So drowning. So strangulation and consent, right. So strangulation and consent are quite interesting. Oh, is that what it is? Thank you very much, Alice. It's very kind of you. I appreciate that. So you can read that. Don't read it now, keep listening, for fuck's sake, come on, do that later. But, so we'll learn some more bits as we go through. And I'm going to try and push through this as quickly as I can so we've got it all. So, consent needs to be informed. That's really important. That's part of what we need to talk about when we're talking about this. Can you be fully informed about this. I didn't know that last part, for example. Does that mean I'm fully informed? Because then we can argue how much information or how much do you need to be informed? It's quite an interesting question. However, the rough sex defence and the way that it works is that consent, if you consent, can be withdrawn at any time. How can you withdraw consent if you lose consciousness in under 4 seconds? And how does the person know that you've lost consciousness? It might be as simple as when you've got hands around the neck or around here or over here, that the person is not tied up, doesn't have their hands behind their back, but they put their hand on the wrist. So like that, does everyone get what I mean? So when the hand's on the wrist and you can feel it, if it starts to drop and go away, then people are going to know, and of course people can grab. Since I've just done some digging, I followed this YouTube channel and they cover anatomy. Yes, there are all the body parts and cadavers. It's really scary for some people. So don't do it if you don't want to. However, they provide random information. Thank you. I've recently started using informative consent because how informed sounds like it's complete. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I don't think there's any such thing as informed consent. I think we have some information and we don't have all of it. So, you know, and again, you can think you know it. I mean, Jesus Christ, it's also the shit you forget. I hadn't put salt and finish aid in my dishwasher. What's that got to do with anything? But I was thinking, all the stuff that's coming out my dishwasher is like, shit, do I need a new dishwasher? And all of a sudden I was like, oh, fuck, I haven't put any salt in there for ages. No, any finish aid, or whatever it's called. What it's called, finish aid, any rinse aid. I put it in. Oh my God, I want to put everything through my dishwasher again. Because I've just remembered something really basic and now everything looks really good. We forget shit. And this stuff is the stuff we should forget. And we've got to be really careful about it. So we've got to be really careful when it comes to consent. The thing that gives consent is the brain. If it's impacted within 4 seconds, what does that mean? So we've really got to be careful. And that piece of research was done with a North Wales Brain Injury Unit, I think, as well. So that's quite interesting as well. So there's a whole platform that they've done it in, and they've covered a lot of papers with it as well. So it's quite cool. There are, as I said, serious implications when we start strangling people, as I said. It is brain injury, it is heart issues, it is all of those things, let alone the domestic violence that comes with it. So it's definitely something we need to think about. And we need to think about why is this person doing it. Of course, there's auto-asphyxiation, autoerotic asphyxiation as well, and quite a few people do that. Quite a few people try and work out how is it that I reduce my blood flow or my airflow at the same time as masturbating. This is more likely to be a penis owner than it is a vagina owner, and it's a lot more common. However, what's interesting is between 1% and 5% of people in the US have done this at least once. So up to 5% potentially have done this at least once in their lives as well, to try it, to see what it feels like. And that's important, isn't it? And what is this? It is the most dangerous thing we can do for ourselves. And it definitely leads to a much better orgasm. I have tried. Do you know what? I want to change the language there and there. I don't know if I can challenge you. You might tell me to go fuck myself, and that's okay. I think it leads to a different orgasm. I think lots of things lead to different orgasms, from connection to touch to awareness to breathing to all sorts of different things. And some are drug induced as well. And really, when we're playing with oxygen, we're changing our body's awareness and the drugs. They honestly think, because I've talked about thousands, they think that the mortality rate around auto-asphyxiation, because you can't always see if this is a reason why somebody has died, it can also look like a suicide, in the States is anywhere between 250 people to just over 1,000, which is what I said before. So we start to get into the thousands. Mostly done by hanging, some done by lecture, so self-hanging, and also done by plastic as well, plastic bags and or chemical substances. Because chemical substances can impact how we breathe and what we do as well. Unfortunately, as I say, a lot of people die from this, so it's very, very dangerous. And again, in my writing, what you'll find is a link at the bottom to a video that's quite shocking because it shows how quickly somebody goes. The different types of orgasm definitely make sense. Only ever used hand around neck when I've done that previously. So it's interesting, do we mean a hand around our own neck? Do we mean a hand around somebody else's neck, and how are we placing a hand around the neck? And then what matters is the size of the neck and the size of the hand. Again, I'm not advocating doing this. I'm not teaching you how to do this. I'm saying this is shockingly dangerous, and please be careful and get educated. That doesn't mean I haven't done it, because I fucking well have, and I've loved it at times. I'm much more scared of it the older I get, and now that I have high blood pressure, I'm more cautious of these things. I'm also a lot more cautious because of my whole lymph drainage system on my right has been impacted after having had my lymph nodes removed because of cancer. All of these things influence how our body reacts and our brain reacts to something. So we just need an awareness of this. What you see is a lot of people giving advice about how to do these things. Right? This is good, this is bad, this is what you've got to do, this is the way to do it. Really? Do you know the exact way to do all of these things? I really question that, because a lot of people do it for likes, a lot of people do it for, hey, it's sexy, a lot of people do it because they want you to follow them, especially on places like FetLife. So it's something we have to think about. In my writing, I think at the beginning, I wrote that I challenged somebody on the way they were teaching something about this, because it was absolutely what awareness means in a practical way. Practical, social, psychological, like all of those things. Our awareness on what does this mean in our bodies and what we're about to do. So when people are writing about this stuff, what they're after is a follow or a laugh, or saying that this is the right way. But often what we need to say, and Karis kind of covered it there, is how does this work for me? What does this mean for me? And we have to be aware of our own anatomy, our own brains, and we really need to improve our awareness around these things. I challenge somebody, because I think this is the edgiest play we can do. As I just said, it's shockingly more dangerous than waterboarding. That was a new piece of information to me, and that's researched by science and backed up by science. What's shocking to me as well is that when I challenged the person on it, because what they said was factually and medically incorrect, they told me to go fuck myself because I was just jealous because I had more followers. If somebody is challenging you and they could be right, maybe we should listen. We live a little bit in a culture that says, don't fucking challenge me. I'm allowed to do what I want, how I want to do it, when I want to do it, and it's none of your business. That's quite interesting, isn't it? Because if the person knows more than you do, and they might not, and if the person is adding in science, research, facts, medical aspects, maybe we should be listening to them. Because I think it's really dangerous, because some people give some very mediocre, very basic advice. And lots of people have a lot of friendly people who say, oh yeah, you can do this, you can do that, it's fine, yeah, it's not fine, do that. Look, I am not an expert, I am not a doctor, I am somebody who works in psychotherapy. That's all I am, and somebody's done this for 40 years. So I do think you have to be really careful and make sure you understand and check all of this that I'm saying out. I've studied restraining methods, but for dangerous situations, the same as lots of psychological nurses do, or psychology nurses, mental health nurses, and different people do. However, please always look for the facts when you're doing this. I think it's really important to always go slow if you're going to do anything like this, become educated, have conversations first, and don't just jump into it, which most of us will do. Most of us will just jump into, yeah, fucking hell, go on, push a bit, strangle. I know, it really hurts. What's the topic? For the last hour, the topic has been choking, breath play, strangulation, and we're also going to look at drowning. That's all right. But I think you've missed all the really important bits, I've got to be honest, so I would go back and rewind and have a look. So it's really important. Over 20 people have died in the last 10 years due to sex games gone wrong. People have been murdered. It's been really shocking. So we always talk about a safer way or a better way. Neither of those phrases are true. It might be okay for you. There is no approved, perfect way of doing strangulation, choking, or waterboarding. There are slightly less dangerous ways to think about that we can cover in a minute, and I will go to those. But please, for a start, avoid this thing called your windpipe. Right? This is really important. Your windpipe, you know that thing there? Like if any of you put any pressure on your own, it just feels horrific if you press or do anything. And a lot of people who go in will try and put their hands around here to make a difference. And actually, that's one of the worst things you can do. And it's very thin and it's a massive pressure. So you've got to be really careful. The start is available on YouTube. It is, and it will be. I will also put this video on FetLife if you pay for having a look. So it's on both places, one for free, one not. So we can give advice when it comes to hitting quite safely, as long as people understand skin, how people bleed, how people bruise, do they take aspirin, what medications they're on, blood thinners, all of these things really matter. And blood thinners also matter in this as well, because that's about what's going to happen here. Waterboarding can lead to long-term brain damage as much as asphyxiation, strangling, choking, all of those things. Doesn't matter what you call it, will also do that. Facebook also has the live from the start and will be available to the workshop, non-alternative market. Thank you, Isabella. Thank you, Roy, for being very supportive. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. So it is fun. It is thrilling. I have definitely passed out and I've done this. However, as I said, the older we get, the greater the risk, especially if you have high blood pressure as well. Cutting off oxygen to the brain is never going to be a healthy idea. We do it because it's going to give us a rush. It's going to give us a really nice feeling. So it is always safer with somebody or with somebody else around who is a watcher. So if you want to do autoerotic asphyxiation, a lot of people do it by themselves. If you can, please, when we're looking at things like people put things over beams, on doorknobs, especially with scarves and different fabrics, and often people drop to a controlled suspension while masturbating, drop in some way. And the aim is to cut the flow of blood off to the neck, through the vein by pressure, which means our blood congests in the brain. And you can see it. So often people have busted blood vessels. Have you seen that when people have done this sort of stuff? So their eyes go in different ways and you can see the busted blood vessels. Have you ever seen that in films and stuff? Or you've had it or you've seen it in people? You might have seen that before. That can happen as well. And of course, if we add in masturbating, toys, penetration or not, all sorts of things, and different people go through different ways of making themselves come. There are levels of being conscious around this, so please have a look at that video that's at the bottom of that writing, because we can go from obtunded to stuporous, comatose, death, and they're really important. I had it from a vanilla course, not fun. No, and it's not fun, is it? Because it's not just the fact that of the damage that it's caused, it's also the interest people have in you all the time. Oh my God, what have you done? Oh, I had an accident. How did you have an accident? What did you do? And then it's really difficult if you have been involved in something that's really hard to explain, especially when we're talking, because people will look at you, they do. I don't think you've met many vanilla people. I appreciate not many of us go out there, but some of us do, to try and have these conversations. And when we say, well, like a bit of slap and tickle, it's very different to saying, oh, I love it when my partner chokes me out, I'm completely passed out, and blah, blah, blah. So we do have to be careful. However, the dark side of TikTok, yeah, I must admit, people get extremely disappointed when I claim that it came from my friends. So I can understand that. Oh, that's quite yeah, it's not, however, because Crohn's is absolutely fucking hideous. And it really isn't pleasant. So I really feel for you, and I hope yours burns out. If it doesn't get some kind of drug, I hope that one day it burns out. Crohn's can burn out in people, and some people need treatment for life. It really varies. So when someone else is involved, we need to make sure that we trust the person. I don't know, it's really interesting. If you just met a person, brand new, would you let them fuck you? A lot of us will say yes if we find the person attractive, won't we? Like we might have sex, we might have casual sex. If we met that person and I'm like, fucking hell, I want them. I quite fancied someone at Lamb the other week, I've got to be honest. I was very tempted to go up and say, I don't know if I'm going to type or anything, but fuck me, would you? I didn't, because I'm not that great. I was very tempted. So we've got to be careful, haven't we? We might have sex. Would you introduce that person to your child if you had a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old on that first night? Would you let them be alone with your child? Would you let them be alone with a sweet little puppy or a dog? It's all interesting, isn't it? Like, at what level and how do I trust this person and what does this mean starts to come into it? Would I let this person meet or hold my baby? Would you? Like, that's quite interesting. I'm not saying any of you have children or not. Some of you do, some of you don't. But all of a sudden, when something else gets introduced where it's a danger to somebody, we're a little more cautious. Wait, what do I know about this person? Are they okay around my child? Why aren't we asking that around ourselves? If somebody's about to check you out, in hell, we have to have some kind of trust, some kind of awareness of how they will react. I would rather see that person flight a few times, to have a conversation, to see how they react under a little bit of pressure, to see what they're going to be like, and that's important. So, again, I'm still going to reiterate this. Please make sure that that person knows how to do some kind of CPR if needed, some kind of care, some kind of first aid. Make sure you've got a phone charged by you. I've already said that once. It's really important. There's a lot of pleasure in this and there's a lot of fun in this. There's also the potential for brain damage and death. You have probably under 3 minutes, is what they reckon, and the ambulance gets you in 3 minutes. I mean, unless I'm doing this in a cubicle, probably not. But it's really something to think about, isn't it? And again, if you have a headache, if you have a blocked nose, if you have sinusitis or a bad cold, if you are, think about how you breathe and what you do. Because if you think about how blocked up you are sometimes and you go to breathe in a panic, it's this that happens. And a lot of people do breath control with coughs, with stuffing mouths as well. We'll come on to that in a minute as well. So please think about your health. COVID taught us a lot when it was around. It taught us about SATs and oxygen saturation. One of the things that kills people is oxygen saturation. People were having COVID and going in to the hospital and saying, I'm absolutely fine, I feel fine, but their oxygen saturation was at 70, 60. Speak to nurses about this. I've got so many medical clients and so many clients who have dealt with all of this. And, it's oxygen saturation that will start to cause an awful lot of trouble as well. And if your oxygen levels decrease, your carbon dioxide do increase. For some people, when that's happening, that consequent lightheadedness is the stuff that gives you pleasure. It's also the stuff that is actually quite dangerous. I wonder how many people have bitten a dick trying to breathe. It's quite interesting. It's quite interesting how many, but what they will naturally do, what you'll see on a lot of videos and what we're watching a lot of people is, and I think we have to be very conscious of this. And I understand that we really want to control, but should we tie someone's hands behind them so they don't have any control and they've got nowhere to go on the bed or against the wall? We can do, but how do we know how bad they are? If you're in the throes of passion, have you even noticed that they've potentially passed out, which takes less than 4 seconds? If you're in the throes of having an orgasm, ask any dick owner here, it takes longer than 4 seconds for that orgasm from beginning to end. Any dick owners here? How many seconds does that orgasm start when it's just building up, it's just coming, and boy, I'm going to come and I'm letting myself go a bit more flaccid. That can take a minute or two for some people. That is longer than 4 seconds. So again, awareness. If you have the person who is being suffocated by dick or anything else as well, or even by queening, by sitting on somebody's face and not allowing for any air to get through, at least if they've got their hands on you in some way, shape or form and they're tapping you or they're doing something that's percussive, we know that they are actually still okay. If their hands drop and all of a sudden we know that somebody isn't okay. And of course we have vomit as well, and we can swallow vomit, and if someone's drunk, that's one of the main causes of death as well. So we've got to be careful. So have that person around. So we should be having fun. Please, again, think about those things. Have a look. Think about things if you've got breathing issues. Think about things like COPD, asthma, cardiac issues, blood pressure. Think about general wellness. Think about diabetes. Think about sleep apnea if you're a sort of person. Think about the width of the neck. The width of the neck, especially if you are obese, makes a real difference around our capacity to breathe because of the weight and different things that happen also help cause sleep apnea. So fat also comes into this too. I'm a fat woman, I have to be aware of it. I know it's going to sound really silly. Really ask if the person on blood pressure medication or blood thinning medication. Also ask if the person has eaten licorice. Licorice increases blood pressure. A lot of people like licorice tea. Honestly, take your blood pressure, have a fucking big cup of licorice tea and take your blood pressure again. It's a shit ton higher for most people most of the time. Look, if you've got somebody who likes licorice, it's something to think about. What you will find as well, one of the symptoms with oxygen deprivation is somebody will yawn a lot. It's very common. Check in with them. That's one. Look around their base level of their cognitive ability too. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that licorice? It really increases blood pressure. So like if you've got somebody who's got high blood pressure and they eat a lot of licorice or drink licorice tea, I mean the black licorice. Some red, but yeah, if you're going to do breath play, they've eaten shit ton of licorice, their blood pressure's just gone up. Probably not a good idea in that moment. I wouldn't anyway. I've had palpitations when I tested this on myself, drinking licorice tea. Serious heart palpitations. Fuck me. That mixed with breath play is not a good idea, nor with any form of waterboarding as well. So, if you're going to do this, please understand, for example, understand some of the base cognitive ability level. How do they work? How do they talk? What do they do? Often when an ambulance crew go in to see somebody and somebody's bumped their head, or they've done something, or they've got some kind of injury, they also look to the other person that's with them. Is your mum, is your dad, is your brother, is your sister, is your partner, is your child? Are they normally like this? Is this often how they respond? Because we need to understand how that person is normally, and if they're different to how they are normally. Again, looking for stroke signals, everything else as well, if they're different to how they are normally. If they sound confused, if they start to slur, if they're not quite right, straight into fucking A&E. Preferably with an ambulance if you can get one, or a paramedic getting to you can make a difference. Deep oxygenation helps. Diaphragmatic breathing, expanding your lungs like bellows, is really good because people can hold their breath for longer. Now, I understand that for a lot of us, we want to get to the point of I'm passing out again. I'm not advocating any form of breath play. I'm not taking responsibility for you doing breath play. This is legally down to you, your choice, and everything else as well. This isn't advice, this is information. Okay? I'm going to clarify that probably every half an hour at least during this. So, deep oxygenation, diaphragmatic breathing can really help us do that choking kind of cocksucking for longer. It means we can hold our breath for longer. It means to have a little bit more control. And of course, some people don't want to have any control at all. So it depends how you want to play. It depends what you want to do. If you are playing with somebody who is larger than you, whether it's height or size, in any way, shape or form, and you are standing up, how can you hold them up? If you're standing up and you're doing some kind of breath or choke or everything else as well, can you hold them? Can you keep hold of them? What is your body positioning in that moment to keep them upright? Because also if they do go, there's also the risk of them banging their head, twisting their ankle, collapsing. I mean, the amount of people who want me to do this sort of stuff in stockings and fucking heels is ridiculous if I'm standing up. Again, size 18, not a small person. The last person I did this with is somebody I really, really, really trust. It makes a difference. And that guy can pick me up and he can bench press and fucking shit Chinese, but he does amazing fitness. I don't like him, I don't trust him at all when it comes to personality, but ironically I do really trust him when it comes to physical play because he's really good at it. So can you really handle, I don't interview somebody up and they go, oh my god, don't pick me up, because we go tense. I work a lot in cheerleading. You can have a flyer that's much bigger than another flyer, but they're lighter to pick up and to carry because they know how to hold their body weight. If somebody is passing out, boom, they go really heavy. So I would also suggest that we don't bind hands or ankles in these moments because that impacts the way people go down and it impacts the way people can tell us. Makes a difference. Please clear your area if you're going to do anything like this. If you have a small coffee table there in the corner and a chest of drawers or anything else, there's pillows out. Think about safety in every way, shape or form, and doing this isn't safe anyway, so we still just need to be aware of that. We've got to be really careful. Facial injuries, hip injuries, different things that can happen. If you've got anything that's holding them up, if we're doing, sometimes I really look at what some people are doing, and they're doing that play that's really difficult, like can you stay on your toes at the same time as having your neck tightened, and you don't know which one to do, but that can just mean 4 seconds and holding someone else up by their neck or some other way really can cause some kind of death. When you're doing this, practice and watch what someone does when the giver is not doing anything else. So when we use breath or choke, as I say, it's face sitting or sex in any way, shape or form, that matters too. Ian Carter says, I had somebody pass out, I think from an overlarge collar hitting their carotid arteries when their head dropped as they went to subspace. Blood choke, unconscious in 2 seconds. Fortunately, restrained with panic straps, so I could hold and release with one hand. I would recommend things like that all the time. If you tie a knot or anything and you've got rope, and by the way, I'm going to talk about different things in a minute as well anyway, even to get scissors, to put the safety scissors underneath to get something going, it's a huge risk. We want to be able to get the person out. I have a big fucking thing about belts, but I'll come on to that one in a minute, about something that happens. So we have to watch. How is somebody stupid? So stupid means rocky, they're starting to go. What's happening then? What do they show? What are the signs when they enter that floppy stage? Your muscles all go, slackening, eyes go, weight goes, face goes, jaw goes. Have you ever seen somebody faint up close? Have you watched someone pass out? Ian has. If you've done it, it doesn't mean you've watched somebody else do it. Again, that's very different. You can't watch yourself go through and do it. How do you have control? Nobody, when they faint, puts their hands out to stop themselves. You know, in the films, you watch some of those people who are supposedly unconscious, but miraculously they tend to go, I'm unconscious, but I'm just going to wait for my fall. That's just not possible. If you're unconscious, you just sort of go, yeah, God, well, that's it. And it really is. So we talk really, really loads of shit. You know, if your arms come up and different things happen and you don't, like, again, we could be talking about death and brain damage. So please be careful. I did say, when we talk about crush, run, pipe, please don't do it. It's not the main cause of death. We promote it as safer because it's part of pressure of the neck around the, as Ian's just said, the carotid arteries. And that's when someone goes, and it can happen by accident. If you've got a high pressure collar on, if you've got somebody who's starting to drop or do something, the pressure changes around that collar, around the ties that you've got around your neck. The pressure on that carotid artery causes a discharge from the vagus nerves. That slows down the heart rate in that moment, and that's what makes a person go. So, it's the carotid arteries that carries in some respects, you're right, it sends a message, a discharge from the vagus nerve that turns around and says, we're slowing down. I also had a friend pass out with a collar on, it was during play, they'd not eaten coffee all day and was on their second scene and they passed out. I'm also going to say you need to eat, you need to drink. Like a lot of porn stars, especially porn stars who are going to receive a blowjob, will just eat things like white apples. Why? Because when they vomit the white apple back up, it looks like cum. So it's often used, but an apple isn't enough to keep you going, and it's not enough to, it's really not. So I mean, if you drink things like Diet Coke and other things that don't give you any sugar and different things anyway, it comes up brown. Or if you drink that, it comes up brown, doesn't it? This shit comes up brown. If you ever vomit it up, it's dark brown. It ain't pretty in a porn film. But an apple comes up like a white, interesting mess. I'm not telling you what to do this, but it's really interesting. If you eat an apple and you vomit it back up, it's, especially a green apple, it comes out pretty fucking white. It's really fascinating. Right, so that pressure on the carotid body here causes a discharge from the vagus nerve, which then says the heart's going to slow down and we can then go floppy. You've got baroreceptors play a part here. So these are the mechanoreceptors located in the carotid sinus. You can pull this up if you want to. And the aortic arch, that dip here that really makes a difference. Their function is to sense pressure changes and they respond to that change in the tension of the arterial wall. So that's a big change, and the idea of those is to check whether our blood pressure is okay to do with blood pressure. Well, we are using pressure. If we're pressing, we are using pressure, so we're starting to change this. So if we have that flop, and whether we have it autoerotic asphyxiation or we have it in choking or strangulation in any way, it tightens the choke in that moment with a collar or anything else around the neck, decreases circulation through the neck arteries as soon as we've done that, and that's what causes asphyxiation because we tend to flop against what's around the neck. So if we have things like collars, scarves, chains, it might not be the windpipe, but it's the round here, it's the pressure here, carotid arteries, that will actually cause death. It's also really important to work out what is around the neck. I see something sometimes with people doing fantastic rope collars. Have you seen them? They're beautiful, the rope collars. I am seriously worried about most of those rope collars when they're very high up, even if they're small. Why? Because depending on what the rope is made of, rope tightens, especially if it gets slightly damp. Anyone here play with rope? Anyone here a rigger? Do they know this stuff? Okay, so one of the things you have to be aware of, so please back me up here because this isn't wrong, is if you play with rope, depending on the rope that you play with, some rope tightens and gets more caught up when it is damp. So it shrinks. Thank you, Ian. There's one person backing me up, and I can see Isabella is also nodding as well. Ask anybody who is a rigger. So if you have something quite tightly around the neck and the person starts to perspire in any way, shape or form, or sweat because it's warm, guess what's going to happen to that rope around their neck? It is going to tighten. So even if you have something on a pull in any way, shape or form, you've got to be really fucking careful about that. Cinda says, I have thought of that too. Debs, I have severe asthma, so I think of these things as well. Yes, please don't use, especially certain forms of rope. Be very careful. Natural fibers in rope will shrink. You can even watch people, they put them around their wrists sometimes. They go, no, I've got a really pretty, look at this. And I point in the shower, like, fuck, that's a bit tight. Because it shrinks when it's wet. And guess what's here? Please think about these things. But we don't, because we like all these things, don't we? Silk is different, but the problem with silk is it knots very cleverly on itself. Satin does as well, so you have to try and pick at these things to get them open. Leather again changes as well when it's damp. The problem with a collar, is in order to get the collar off, you have to tighten the collar more to open it to then take it off, don't you? Because it's got that lovely little prong when it comes to anything. This is the problem with leather belts. If you are going to use a leather belt, this is going to be your new rule. Again, this isn't me telling you what to do or advice. This isn't me saying you must do this. I am going to tell you what to do on this one. If you're going to practice anything with a belt, take the fucking prong out of the belt. Because if you use a belt, so use a specific belt, I know it's really sexy when you're standing there and you whip that leather belt off and then, oh God, I just bruised my knickers. That sounds so good. I've got a bit of free cum on my cock just from that sound alone. Be still, my beating fucking fanny, right? That's the response that you're going to have in some way, shape, or form. Vaginal flutters, penile flutters, whatever. If that person uses that belt for work or for anything else as well, I can't remember what it's called, I have written about it. That little fucking bit, please take it off, take it out. Because if it catches and you are really tight and the person is starting to pass out, you have to tighten it even more if it's caught to loosen it. Like, can we really make that clear? Has anyone thought of that before? Did anybody know that? Please think about that sort of thing. It's why the two-finger rule is always good when tying self or otherwise, not for neck. Don't ever self-tie around your neck when you're alone by yourself. Please, ever. Look, if you've got a group of people around you who concentrate, the thing is we don't concentrate. We just go, Isabella's there tying around her neck and then, oh my God, I went to the pictures last night. Did you see it? 4 seconds is gone. You know, like it means attentiveness. And always have safety scissors nearby. For sure, but if somebody's gone, they're gone down 4 seconds, how quick are you? 4 seconds. 1 fucked up life, 2 fucked up life, 3 fucked up life, 4 fucked up life. You know, we've just got to be really, really careful. So it does cause injuries. As I said, there are lots of things we can do. You can really sore throat, you can very disorientated. Plus, as well, when somebody is fighting for oxygen and breath play, let's say you're using a bag or something else as well, we will claw, kick, and fight potentially to get out of that. So that's really important. Got to be very careful because let's say something is around that person's neck, they're panicking, you cut off oxygen, either let's say through a hip mask, through a tube, or you put a bag over their head. If you are going to use bags, please do not use normal plastic bags. Again, I'm not advocating anything here to say that this is what you should do. Legally, I'm not claiming any of that shit. The sort of plastic that is the safest to use, and there is no safe plastic, okay, let me just cover that, is the stuff you get from dry cleaners. Do you know what I'm talking about? You know the dry cleaner covers, the very thin ones? Because if you put them over the face, you can go, I can't do it now. That'll do. You can pop it. You can pop it in your mouth. I learned in a class that if someone is going to use a belt, that they should move the buckle on the belt to the side of the neck, keep it away from the windpipe. And that still isn't enough. If you have it here or here, it's still going to cause a problem. It's pretty irrelevant where it is. That's true. It can cause less damage on the windpipe. But the most important thing is take that fucking little clasp hunting thing out from the middle. Even though I can't remember. What the fuck it's called. I will remember at some point during this time, or if somebody looks it up, they'll tell me. It's really important to be careful about that. No, the dry cleaning bags can split, a small bit gets stuck in the windpipe. No, if it's still the safest form of plastic to use. If you listen to what I said, there is no safe plastic to be used. You cannot get it off. At least the person stands a chance if they bite it or open it to try and breathe. It's not a no, it's the only one that you can actually do that with. Cling film, most other things you can't. Am I advocating ever using a plastic bag over somebody's head? Fucking hell no. Absolutely not. No. Because it's really difficult to get it off sometimes. And actually they stand a better chance of living. It's a mess, but it's a fucking mess, isn't it? So if you can pop it or cut it or catch it with your teeth, the bit of the buckle is called the prong or pin. Thank you very much, Alice. Take the fucking prong or the pin out. Should have known that, shouldn't I, really, in some way, shape or form. So any form of plastic isn't good here. So it's not good. When we're fighting for oxygen in some form of breath play, there is no such thing. It isn't smooth. It doesn't help us. With oxygen deprivation, we really do fight. It's not very good. And I've seen that fight freeze when they're really, really fighting. And I've mentioned her before, I was involved in a completely consensual kidnap, blah, 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 whatever. And I've watched a girl break an oak bed trying to get off it. Snapped it. Oak. She's Amazonian. Fuck me, she snapped it. Hair can be quite good to control people. It's a very good position if we've got a high fixed bun or a ponytail. But if you are doing a choke from behind, I would rather you put the hair up, out of the way, so you can see the neck. You can watch the skin, you can watch the responses that people have. Lots of hair in the way means we can't see it. Also, other bits can catch. If we can swallow hair, even like Ian's just said, we can swallow all sorts. And so we can swallow our own fucking tongue in this scenario as well. So we've got to be careful. If you are having some form of plastic fabric, please keep it away. As I say, rope harnesses, don't do it. A thin tie isn't great. We're talking about spread here. If the person has a smaller hand in the throat, would it be better to use an object? Yes, or use two hands, depending on what you want to do for pressure or play. The best thing you can use, and I'm still going to try and say this, is look, if you want to take someone out really quickly, you want to learn about self-defense mechanisms on arms, around necks and heads, which is what police and army and other people are taught. But it's very quick and it's very dangerous. Martial arts and combat chokehold, as Tiger Lily says. That's going to be classic, but it's going to take someone out very quickly. If you use thin things like stockings, tights, thin ties, suspender belts, thin rope, what you haven't got is the spread, and it's the spread that makes a difference. Rubber, latex might be sexy, it ain't good for choking, it ain't good for any form of deprivation. So that's not good either, so we've got to be very careful. And please be aware when you're part of breath aid, Ian's absolutely right that anything is dangerous that can go down the throat. So can latex, so can something. You'll be amazed at how things break up and what things can do. So you've got to be really careful. So as I said, if you sweat, if you just come out the bath and you put rope around somebody's neck and they've got wet hair, guess what's going to happen to the rope? It's going to tighten, so you've got to be really careful. Anything that cuts in creates pressure. You know when you watch on films that somebody comes up and they choke someone with that tiny bit of wire? Honestly, what that film should show is that they start to cut the fucking neck off, not that it's any form of choking, because it would just break in. It doesn't, what we see doesn't make sense. So width is really important here. There is a really good writing by Jay Wiseman as well. Again, I've linked that in the bottom of this writing. I've linked everything that we can. And again, thin metal type collars or anything else like that isn't good. And these are the really, really wide ones when you've got like a sort of like a position collar to really make it uncomfortable. person leans over, pressure is already here, that causes, so it causes an issue. When your hands are used, again, please avoid the windpipe. Again, if you have very small hands, as was just asked, that also causes an issue. We're trying to make an L shape. We're trying to create space. So we have this going on around the windpipe. But that's difficult, so we're looking for that dip here that makes a real difference. It can save a life. However, it can also take a life. You've got to be quite careful. Please have a look. I do not recommend, especially with size here, that a huge hand or a small hand works. Please have a look at it. Make sure you need a license to be able to choke somebody out like that. You have to have a license. So what makes you think that you can just do it? Please bear in mind as well, if you are going to do any form of cough choking or deep choking as well, which is pretty a lot of fun, that 37% of people have no gag reflex whatsoever as human beings. I haven't met many of them, but it's around 37% apparently. 15% of people have a hypersensitive one. So again, how do we know how we're doing, what's happening? We can learn to desensitize a gag reflex, but a gag reflex also tells us something. And if a fair proportion of people don't have a decent gag reflex, how do we know whether they're struggling? Because they're not going, they're not doing any of that. So that really matters as well. And it really does matter. Saliva really matters, but of course people need to really breathe in between because they need that sort of saturation needs to be here. So if you want to lift up and you want to have a look at the reduce your gag reflex, humming is really good for you. Desensitization is really good for you. Try and lift up your soft palate. All of these things can help you. Your gag sensitivity lies. Acupressure can help. Squeezing your thumb in your left fist, pinching the fleshy skin between your thumb and finger. All of these things can help your gag reflex. That's your Hindu point, and they can reduce gag and they can look at breath control as well. Nothing is a recommendation. I'm saying that again. So no matter what it's you, there is no right answer. There's no proper way of doing this. All of these things have a really serious risk. I think what you've got to do is get to know the person you're going with as much as you can and learn from them. It really needs to be careful. Face sitting, bad fabrics, bad plastics, even the good plastics can still cause death and can still cause problems. I think if you want to do breath play, I really don't agree with, this is a personal thing, so you can tell me to go fuck myself, I'm really okay with that. I don't think we should tie up hands at the same time. We've just got to be aware that because if the person is moving and we can see that, that's always very good. So that very thin polythene, yeah, I totally agree that it can, but it also is the only thing we can actually put our finger in to rip open. It is much safer to put your finger in to rip open that way than it is to suck in and pop it. It's a much safer way, so it rips better. So it's harder. So options, they're all bad. However, they're options and they do make a difference. Please be careful. We've got to be, when you are fighting, again, that panic against restraints and stuff, if that person, you're going to be a danger to yourself and others. If you want to do, let's talk a little bit about waterboarding and then come back to choking as well. Waterboarding and drowning. People talk about dry drowning, people talk about dying on land through drowning. It's all drowning. It doesn't matter what you call it, it's just drowning. That's what it is. If you really want to understand a lot about drowning, actually what you really need to do is some kind of diving course. It is not, the first aid is not the same for drowning completely as it is because of choking hazards and because of water being retained in the lungs and the bronchi in different areas. That makes a real difference as well. So we've really got to make sure that we know what we're talking about when it comes to this. There is no way, again, to prepare. So even if you go into something like waterboarding, so waterboarding is a form of torture. That's what it's meant for. And the idea is that a piece of fabric is put over the mouth or a cloth is put inside the mouth, like knickers or a piece of fabric or anything else as well, and water is then poured. What you will find is the person is often tipped backwards, up slightly, and you might think, I can control this, I can be all right. If you speak to people who have done waterboarding as a form of torture, so if you speak to ex-army or different people, a lot of people say you do have to, they're forced to try it a little bit, but they are often shocked at their own responses to it because of how serious it is. unless water is cleared from your lungs, like drowning, and your mouth, in a matter of minutes, you will pass out from a lack of oxygen. Or if you use a plastic barrier, you can suffocate. So waterboarding is often used to, they don't want to kill people, they want to torture people. There was a very famous situation a couple of years ago, I don't know if any of you saw it. Did anybody see it on FetLife about the woman who waterboarded a man? Did anyone see it on FetLife? Some people did, some people didn't. What happened was they were playing, she researched it as much as she can, and he ended up with severe long-term brain damage. They ended up knocked together, and it was a complete fuck-up. It was absolutely horrific what happened to him. I think at that time, they'd already spent $280,000 alone after 6 months in his medical care on this. So, and she'd done all of the homework as much as she could. And she's this much smaller person, and he's a much bigger person. And he had very long-term brain damage. You know what, I don't even know if he's around anymore. Somebody said to me they were really frightened he disappeared. And his last message was horrific. And he has, so have he killed himself? Is he in fact? People don't know. It's absolutely horrific. So often in waterboarding, you're blindfolded, you're not blindfolded. People want to take you aware of your surroundings. You might be sitting, you might be tied to something, and you tip back. The message reporting was taken down. Yeah, I know. Yeah. With you on that one, Ian, I tell you. So you will be restrained, and you'll find people around you. In our case, what somebody will probably be is that your hand will probably be free. People really like the idea here at the end of tying someone up. If you're putting the extremity of bondage with this sort of play, that's something I would say think about. Just if you can, just think about it. They will place a cloth or material over your mouth, or like a muslin, often, or they will put one into your mouth. It's like a handkerchief. But when it becomes wet, that cloth becomes a one-way valve. And that's the problem that we have here. It lets water in, but not back out through the cloth. It's interesting how it works. So you can be waterboarded anywhere, and a t-shirt will do. You don't need a lot to do waterboarding. So when you can feel very disorientated within a matter of seconds when that terror floods your body, that's a real issue as well. It might be that people have cellophane hold noses, do different things, and you can't really prepare yourself. There's not a lot that you can do. And waterboarding now has been considered by is it who and somebody else that is no, excuse me, it is really, people are saying no. It's been around for fucking years there. What was the Spanish? God, what is it even before that actually? So it's been around for such a long time, and it's been used everywhere. It was first reported in the mid-1970s. That's when we actually people said we're using this as a form of torture. But it's been around for forever. It's really serious. It is a form of torture. It's very trendy. I see there are a certain couple of people on FetLife who have a lot of followers, who have very beautiful, young, tiny, slim submissives, and it looks hot and it looks sexy, especially when they're drowning them over the bath, they're doing all these different things. And it does cause very serious trauma to people as well afterwards, potentially as well. But what was I talking about earlier? The Spanish Inquisition, it's been known even since there. It was called, it's also been connected to countries. So it's been called Chinese water torture, and it's been called Spanish water torture as well. When you understand drowning, you have to understand all those phrases like near drowning, dry drowning, wet drowning, all of those things. They don't mean anything. Secondary drowning, they just mean drowning. The World Health Organization will currently think you mean drowning. But we still use those terms. So you'll find them even used in medical journals, and they're not there. Drowning is respiratory impairment from submersion or immersion in a liquid. So drowning is the process, it's not the end result. So we've got to be very careful of that. It doesn't always include death, it's how we submerge, it's how the impairment comes along. And drowning is limited to liquids, because actually in powders are asphyxiation, so it's slightly different. So drowning is just about liquids. And what you've got is mortality, so you've got death, that's a potential outcome. You've got morbidity, and very serious illness or injury, or you've got no morbidity, somebody will be okay. But again, the problem with this is you don't know. There is very different first aid for drowning situations than there is for the sort of stuff that we do generally. So again, please understand that you need to look at what you're actually doing. So you understand that the drowning has a different thing. I make a silly comment to people when they want to do really extreme stuff with me, right? I turn and say, are you going to care for me? If I can't walk, I'm shitting myself the rest of my life. If I can't breathe, are you going to be paying my medical bills? Are you going to be doing those things? Enhanced interrogation here. It's interesting, isn't it? And that's a rookie guy, thanks, Cinders. So all of these things, even if it causes PTSD, something psychological, what if it causes something physical, are you going to look after me? What are you going to do to help me amongst any of these situations? At the bottom of my writing, I have a shit ton of links. Jay Wiseman talks about this, and he talks about it on FetLife. You can have a look at that. There are diagrams and methods around breath play that I've got linked in that writing as well, so you can have a fucking good look about what it means and what it works. The Voice, I don't know if you've heard of The Voice on FetLife, he does a paid-for video. The only thing I would argue with in his videos is that he doesn't talk about taking the prong out in the belts. So absolutely take those out. And I've written about belts and buckles before. There are some good writings on breath play I've linked as well. Please as well, what do you do when someone is unconscious, and do you understand what the levels of consciousness are? There is also a really good YouTube video, which I've linked at the bottom, and it's so graphic and frightening. So if you're going to be triggered by it, don't watch it. Please don't watch it. However, if this is the shit you want to do, you should. Because, and again, not taking any legal responsibility. This is all down to you about what you want to do with it. It shows how quickly someone loses consciousness and is in trouble. So we can play with all of these things and we can use all of these things, but still one of the best things that we're going to do if we're going to do this is by simply playing with oxygen. The safest way if you want to do breath play, but it isn't half as sexy, is to simply cover your mouth over somebody else's. You get to breathe in through the nose, you hold their nose, they don't get to breathe in. We're then playing with the carbon dioxide levels and the oxygen levels that they're actually having, and it's much more gentle, it's a different way of doing it. Do I still think it's safe? No, there is no safe way. However, that oxygen control can really make a difference. And that's slightly different to cutting off air supply and cutting off blood supply. And there are real differences. As I say, there are plenty of people out there who are willing to tell you how to do this, and it's really dangerous. So, I'm going to save the last bit for any questions. What else do you want to know? What questions do you have? What else are you thinking of when it comes to this sort of thing? So when it comes to drowning, different things that you can do, what questions do you have and what do you want to know about breath play, about drowning? And if I don't know, somebody else in the room might know. And if I do know, I'll answer you. But I'm really honest about what I do and don't know and what I've come across. And I also don't like to say things that haven't been backed up by some kind of research, some kind of science, or some kind, if I say it's a personal experience, I will always tell you that it's a personal experience in comparison. So does anybody have a question or want to ask anything? I will add a bit about devices, masks and pipes because of tidal volume and dead air. So do you want to explain that, Ian? What do you want to say? So, I was about to speak for you then. I can't help it, can I? My mouth just stopped. So, when you're looking at devices, so do you want to say anything? What do you want to do? Do you want to type? Do you want to say about that? Would you like to unmute? I can. Ian Carter, unmute. I've unmuted you, Ian, if you want to say anything.
Hear me?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So I think this is a lot of people when they're doing breath play, play around with gas masks and pipes and bags and things.
And drugs as well, don't they? So people add drugs into those as well.
They do. I don't touch drugs, so I don't go anywhere near any of that. But if you're using, one of the things you need to be aware of, and it's the same thing if you've ever been snorkeling, is that the air in your lungs goes in and out in a tidal way. And if that air doesn't get to the end of the pipe, then when you suck it back in again, all you're doing is sucking in your own exhaled air.
Which is carbon dioxide, so there's no oxygen in it.
So basically, normal air has 20% oxygen in it. Exhaled air has still got 16% oxygen, but it's got 4% carbon dioxide as well. And that will make you a bit ropey. So you definitely need to make sure, much safer if you can get it, is something where you've got an inlet valve and an outlet valve. So the air goes out through one pipe and comes into a different pipe. If it's going in at the same pipe, you have to be really as to whether you're actually getting any air in at all.
And if you've watched, like, so if you've seen the film, you know the boys that were caught in the cave and they did that dive to try and save them, there's some English divers were involved in that. And you'll see it in anything when we look at everybody who, like, is when people are doing, it was all about the oxygen was left in there and the impact that it has on people's brains. So what we're saying here is, and what Ian's explaining, is that the quality of oxygen in the air really matters. And what we don't understand is that sometimes when we're breathing air back in a certain way, even in a room, if it is fully sealed or a sealed area, and that comes to a plastic bag or anything that's fully sealed, you're not getting oxygen in when you're breathing. Each time that oxygen is reducing, which is what you're saying, aren't you, Ian?
Yeah, absolutely. Now I do breath practice with my voice, just with talking to people about when they can breathe, when they can't breathe, and you can get the same sort of dry time with that. And you talked about kissing breath there as well, where they're breathing through you, and
that's the same problem. It's the same thing.
They're getting your exhaled air, so they're never going to get.
That's why it can work as well, though. So that's what I'm looking for it as well.
It can get very, very hot. I actually had, I was doing something in the club once, just with my boys, and when I stopped, so I've been telling this person for a long time to breathe in, breathe out, stop breathing, hold your breath. And when I stopped, the person went unconscious. And when they came round again, they said, "What happened?" I said, "Well, you were telling me to breathe, so when you stopped telling me, I just stopped breathing." They were that floaty that point.
And that's the problem. This is what I'm saying through this whole thing, is that when someone consents, if you are playing with someone's oxygen levels, their capacity to consent changes. And it's also about clarity of message as well, isn't it? You know, no, you need to breathe. Yeah, but you said stop. Oh, fuck, how am I being clear and what have I got to do there?
Yeah.
How is that's also a link to first aid and drowning.
The other thing I would say is, when I was doing breath play, I just hold my breath myself, so I feel what it feels like for them. But I played with somebody who's got COPD, and they can hold the breath for about 3 seconds. And I played with someone who's a very experienced sub-aqua diver, and she can hold her breath for about 4 minutes.
Yes.
So that's the sort of difference you have to deal with.
That's not necessarily safe. So for me, I would say if you're going to do that, ask the person if they've got any medical or physical issues. Also ask them what their breathing is like normally. The sort of people that you might find that extend their breath are swimmers, divers, but also singers, especially opera singers. Singers who can control their breath can often hold their breath for longer. And also, if somebody's in a bit of a state of panic, we hyperventilate, which means we're also not getting enough oxygen in. And that causes a secondary oxygenation problem in the lungs if we're hyperventilating, because we've got carbon dioxide going in. So if somebody isn't in control of their breathing and they are panicking in that moment, what they need to do, I know it sounds ridiculous, is to take a really long breath out. They need to go, because that will make them breathe in. I think I did mention the stats earlier. Did I not say that you can put them on someone as well? I think I mentioned it when we were talking about COVID. So it can be. I've got a couple, so you can check oxygen levels. However, they are severely impacted. Anyone here got gel nails? If you've got gel nails, the capacity for a pulse oximeter to work effectively is reduced. Any ambulance crew, any water tower that say, "Oh, I can't really trust it because you've got nails on." Apple Watch is a good way to avoid the nail polish issue if you have one, obviously, if you know how to use it. And again, it's about blood. So none of these things are an impact of being in hospital at the end of the day. That makes a real difference.
Also be aware of people of colour who the oximeters often don't work with them.
Yeah, because it's always that skin. Like Isabella just said, black nail polish blocks oximeters. And also, I would also argue that there is a fantastic writing. I really must try and find it actually, because I could link it here, or maybe somebody could. Where actually there's a doctor who shows the difference between people of any person, a difference in colour to white. Because, white isn't the only skin colour people, right? I know it's a shock, but it isn't, for fuck's sake. And actually, this doctor spent a long time looking at the difference around how people are, like, for example, if they're tachycardic, if their skin is starting to show signs of struggling, and because it's absolutely different. Yes, so Cinders, you're saying the same thing as Ian there, so we're saying the same sort of thing. So you've got to think about these things, please. I am a singer, and I used to sing for a living, if you want to know that about me. So I used to sing for a living, so my breathing is really good. However, if I then forget to tell you, oh shit, actually, my breathing is really good, even though I had bronchitis, pleurisy, and pneumonia when I was 18. I went to get up for my last day of A levels, and I had fucking pneumonia. I didn't do well in that French exam. I didn't know, so I had to retake it. So you've got to really think about these things. So when we, so I might try and say to you, I've got really good breath control. The truth is, however, though, that when I had chemo, I had 2 lung clots in each lung, and that's impacted my breathing slightly ever since. And I was on blood thinners, and that took 8 to 9 months to recover from. So check people's medical history. Pink shrink, even though that's my name, you're absolutely right. And we have to, it's not that it's racist, it's that we didn't know these things when these things were invented, and things are getting better. So when you have a tattoo that is really dark, again, I have a shit ton of them all over me. They make a difference for readings as well, if they're on your fingers, if they're on your wrists, and however we read anything. So again, when people are panicky, they tend to breathe oddly, which makes this a hell of a lot worse, and then they start fighting for things. Anyone else got any more different questions or anything else that they would like to know before we wrap up? Or what do you think about everything we've said so far? Where are you on this? Has anybody learned anything new? Does anybody, does anybody want to add anything? How are we on all of this? And does it make some people say, I'm never fucking doing breath play? And does some people say, oh my God, I really want to do this? And restricted area says, I'd like to add a risk of waterboarding. Larynx spasms are involuntary and sometimes fall under the drowning label. There's a long name, I can't remember it, but basically your body involuntarily closes your own airway, pressure behind the larynx, help relax the jaw as kind of forward jaw pull, which is why the recovery position is not the best when we talk about drowning. It's bronchial spasms as well, and it's the larynx. It makes a real difference. I've got it written somewhere, I know I have, about this and what happens, when actually. So thank you for saying that. That's really handy. Thank you for reminding me as well. I really appreciate that restricted area. So that's another reason why we shouldn't put people lying down in the recovery position when we're doing waterboarding. And that's what she didn't know. And that's one of the things that went wrong for her. Absolutely not, but I would be more aware. You mentioned scarves. Is there a reason they're used? What do you mean, like silk scarves, that sort of thing? Because they look pretty, they feel nice, they're soft, aren't they? And we feel like we have a lot of control over them. And for some silk scarves, they will slip and knot quite nicely. But because they slip open, people will knot them extra tight to make up for it. And the width of silk scarves is one of the reasons that they use if you've got something rather something thin, because thicker is safer. Thicker is safer. That's a really good mantra around these sort of things. Honey says it's been excellent. Thank you. You have reinforced that I definitely don't want to try waterboarding, but I've learned so much. Thank you do. Holger Nielsen technique was the resuscitation I was taught for drowning. Is it the latest one to teach? I can't remember. It might be.
That was about 40 years ago, so.
Yeah, I can't remember. I don't know what the latest one is, and I haven't done any diving since before I had cancer. I'm like, do you know what? I don't know if I'd want to after having lung clots. That's quite interesting. So I've dived in a very, very, very long time. So I honestly, if you're going to do this sort of stuff, speak to a diver, go diving, learn resuscitation. I'm not here to teach all the resuscitation methods because I can't. And I'm not qualified to teach them to you. When Poppy and I do our weekends, we are going to do some first aid specifically meant for us. That's what we're going to be doing as part of it. So it'll be around what we do if we slice someone open too much or if someone's bleeding or these sorts of things. And it'll be advice. There's no qualification for us. There's nothing that qualifies us in these basics. Nothing. Parada, no breath play for me ever. Totally not worth it. It's less worth it for me nowadays than it ever used to be. And I also quite like the feeling of it and what it does to me. So it's difficult. what do you do? If you really enjoy something, it's harder. It really is. It makes a difference. With drowning, with anything else as well, I think as well, it's the water, it's the alveoli that makes a difference as well. Reduced lung compliance, and that's when it starts to collapse as well. That makes a difference. So it's hypoxia really, cardiac arrest, arrhythmia, that's what really happens. And regardless of what the water is and how it comes from, because our membranes can't work properly with the water and because we've got so much fluid, everything changes. And it is the alveoli is on top of what you mentioned as well, restricted area. So thank you for that. It's a really good reminder. It's why, actually, a lot of the time, when we're plunged into water, even with the life jackets, we've got to be really careful because we just need to keep our airway above the water. That's what matters as much as anything. But of course, in this, we're forcing water down somebody's throat on a regular level. Even if you hold your breath, that diving link I put in, have a look at it because it also does talk about something that Ian was just saying. It talks about even when we're diving, it talks about elevated CO2 levels and it talks about decreased oxygen levels. And it shows you where the blackout zone is and what happens and how CO2 triggers that breathing in that moment and what happens. High CO2. So it's got it all in there if you want to have a look and it might help you a little bit. I mean, it also talks about where you need to breathe and it's because you must have heard of these things when people dive too fast or come up too fast or have you looked at that sort of stuff when you watch films and everything else as well? You must have seen that sort of thing. But one of the biggest risks when people are diving is actually hypothermia more than anything. I think it's really interesting as well when we're looking at water. If you're going to play with water, if you're shoving someone in a bath, if it's freezing fucking cold, please be aware of what that does to somebody as well. It really is serious. So again, have you got your phone ready? What are you going to do? Was the person submerged? How long were they submerged for? What happened? Are all really basic principles of recovery. So we do have to be careful. I'm going to write this stuff down. So I really hope everyone's got a little bit of something from today. Does anybody else want to ask a different question before we finish? I've tried to be really basic. I've tried to be really normal language. I've tried to really use terms that we all use rather than trying to be too clever. So I hope everybody's got something from this in some way, shape, or form. Thank you very much for your time. If you don't have a different question, please double check with people. My favourite questions really are, what will you do when it goes wrong? What have you done when it's gone wrong before? And if somebody says it's never gone wrong, never? I mean, normal sex goes wrong. I mean, how many people have snapped their banjo or got thrush or fucking bacterial vaginosis or it's gone up someone's arse by accident or like things go wrong, don't they? So yeah, let's understand when things go wrong. Restricted area, thank you very much too. Roy, thank you. I think it is good to know these things because then you have informed consent or informative or as informed as you can be consent. It's as good as it gets. We can never know everything. You do not know how you will respond in these situations and you do not know how your body will respond in these situations. When I had those 2 lung clots in each lung, I was functioning quite well. My sister was telling me, who is a qualified nurse and midwife, that my response to the breathing was because my bloods were so bad. I was awaiting a blood transfusion at the time, and I knew it wasn't that. I knew something else was wrong. I really, really knew something was wrong. And even in the hospital, I went at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it wasn't until it was 8:30 at night. It was a long time later, near enough 12 hours, where they turned around and they gave me an fMRI with contrast and said, oh, look, you have got lung shots. My saturation is just fine. So all these things aren't always clear indicators. We've got to be careful. Ian, thanks so much. I was already very cautious with waterboarding, more so now. Oh, thank you very much, and thank you for what you said, Ian. Cosmopolite, thank you. Informed as you can be consent. I like that. Well, I think that's all we can be. It is informed as you can be. If you have asthma or you have anything else as well, please be extra careful around this stuff. Please, please, please. And please make sure you have inhalers and everything else with you ready, because the amount of people that don't is just shocking. I do cheer and I have to have at least 4 sets of bags, and if inhalers are always ready, they get off the mat and they're like, can't breathe. Because that 2.5 minutes is a killer. Thank you for donating your valuable time. Oh, thank you so much. Scissors, yeah. I've had severe asthma attacks that were presenting as normal. Sometimes things include hospital, it takes medics. Yes, it does. If they're shocked, especially if they're overworked and busy in time. Kelly, thank you for the session. It was informative and lovely. Isabella says thank you so much. Thank you all so much as well. If you've had COVID, you may also have patches in your lungs that don't work. Yes, anything that is anything like COPD, anything that impacts your lungs, you'll be very surprised. A couple of blood clots, asthma, any of these things, anything that's impacted your breathing, previous bronchitis, pleurisy, pneumonia, anything, and even bronchiolitis, even the smaller things, you just need to be aware. Really need to be aware. So thank you, SD Shankar. Thank you, everybody. You're really kind. And I will see you all in a couple of weeks. And let me know if you want me to cover any particular topic or different topic that you would like me to cover in any way, shape, or form, and I'll cover that as well. Thank you very much for your time. I will see you all in a couple of weeks. Okay. See you later. Thank you. Thank away. See you later. Bye. Bye. Oh, thank you, Zinders. Thank you. Bye.